Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Gary Owen with the Get Some podcast. It's been a interesting week, to say the least. The podcast, the goal of it is to be lighthearted. I want it to be an escape from everything going on in the world. But in times like these, this is when I'm actually glad I have a podcast and have a platform, because, with the passing of George Floyd, the murder of George Floyd, and the riots going on all across the country, I find myself in an interesting position because, on one hand, I'm a white guy, obviously, married to a black lady, got mixed kids, which by society standards are black kids when they leave my house. On the other hand, I'm an ex-police officer. Granted, military police. But I was on a base that had everything. It had a nightclub. It had base housing, which is a little neighborhood. It had restaurants. It had, it had everything. It just had everything. Barracks, which is basically an apartment building for single people. And just like in society, on military bases, you have different classes. You have the officers' quarters. You have the enlisted quarters. So you have different classes of people. And with that, I've seen, I've had my fair share of dealing with good and bad military police officers. I'll say that. Granted, much less extent than being a Detroit police officer or a Chicago police officer, because we don't have a lot of murders on the bases. We don't have you don't hear about police brutality on military bases, but we do have our fair share of people that just don't like the cops, guys that I felt got picked on in high school that are now cops in the military, which I feel is, I think that's everywhere. So for me, it's interesting because I know not all cops are bad. I know there's more good cops than bad cops. I know it's a crazy situation to be in. It's tough when if your first day on the police force, you're a new guy. And what if they sit you in a car with some psychopath that you don't realize he's a psychopath? So your first interaction with people, you're looking at this cop, and you're kind of following suit. You're like, what do I do? I mean, just imagine it's your first day on the police force, and you see the guy you're riding with, so your partner, who basically you're dependent on him and he's dependent on you, and you see him doing some crazy shit. And what do you do if it's your first day? Do you report him to your commanding officer or your chief? Do you just follow suit, or what do you do? That's what oftentimes I be thinking when I see some of these police brutality cases where the partner didn't step up and do anything. You're looking at them like, oh, why aren't you doing anything? Or it's a lose-lose. It's a lose-lose situation. But I find it interesting with all the protests and the rioting going on. I've never seen at any point in the history of this country where we're really pulling back the curtain that not all right. If a black guy gets killed by a cop, which seems to be that's the powder keg that ignites everything in this country more than any other thing. It's not black on black crime. It's not white on white crime. It's not a random white person killing a black person or a random black person. It's when a police officer murders a black guy. And now we have cameras, we have phones, we have social media. Now we can see it. Now with the rioting, we're also seeing it just because a black guy gets killed by a white cop, and you see protesters and you see rioters and you see looting, Now more than ever, we're seeing it's not just black people that's looting. It's not just black people that's rioting. We're seeing that there's a whole segment of society that is showing up at these riots and is basically igniting the looting and the rioting. They're not, and majority of the time, they're not even from that city. So you'll see people in Atlanta, you'll see people in Minneapolis, and you're seeing people in LA. And then people are starting to get wise, like, oh, these people aren't from our city. They're coming into our city and starting the looting. They're starting the breaking the windows of Target and Starbucks and spray. I saw a video of 2 white women spray painting Black Lives Matter on a Starbucks. And a black woman is on her cell phone saying, why are you doing that? Because they're going to blame black people for that. And they're masked up. I saw the video of the white guy dressed in all black with the gas mask on. Purple. It was purple right here. He had an umbrella, and he just started smashing windows. They were going down the line, smashing. And now more than ever, we're seeing the curtain pull back. Like, you just thought it was a bunch of young black kids just wilding. We're finding out that that's not the case. And as a comedian, we're put in a weird situation dealing with times like these because, I always look at social media as fun. It's fun to me. I like making jokes. I like making people laugh. But I don't want to be insensitive either. And sometimes, comedians' job is to make people smile and laugh when they're at their lowest, when it's a dark time. But in this time, I've never in my life seen a darker time where I feel like it's insensitive to post a joke. These last couple of days, I didn't feel like it was right. In fact, like I post a lot on my social media. But I also have people that help me post stuff. I got my tech people, and they'll pull a video and they'll tell me, hey, Gary, at 6 o'clock on Monday, we're going to post this comedy clip of yours. We pulled it, we cut it up, we edited it. And I'm like, great. I told everyone that works for me, I said, hold all social media. I'll post what I want to post, but hold it all because I just didn't feel like it was the time to post a joke that had nothing to do with what's going on in the country. I struggle with everything going on because me and my daughter was supposed to go to Oakland on Monday. We were going to go with a couple of her friends. I was going to be the adult, and we were going to peacefully join a protest that was scheduled. But then we saw what was going on in Oakland, and people was wilding. So a few people, one person got killed. I don't know if a few, but one person definitely got killed. And numerous people got injured. And now I'm like, I had to tell her, we can't go because it's just not safe. And I don't want to risk me or you or your friends getting hurt. So on one hand, you want to be supportive, but on the other hand, you got to look out for your own safety. And I'm very aware that I live in a bubble where the part of the country I live in, we're just watching it on the news. It's not affecting us at all. My neighbors, I'm still waving at them. Kids are still riding bikes. So I'm definitely very aware that I'm kind of like out of the loop. I'm not even attempting to go into the city. And so it's like, you got your hands are kind of tied. And I see my daughter, she's posted on social media now, and she's in a weird position because she's 17. She's very socially aware of what's going on. I always say she's going to have a future in politics for sure. She's going to be one of those people leading the marches and the protests when she gets to college. And she's making posts on her Facebook saying, a lot of her white family members, she's saying things like, you guys, your silence is basically what she's saying, your silence is letting me know that you're not standing with me. And so I'm going to some of my family members' posts on Facebook now. I'm looking them up. And some family members are it's kind of weird because I know nobody in my family. Now, I'm not talking about my stepdad's side. I'm talking about that side of the past. I'm talking about the other side of my white family. I know none of them are racist, but I also know they don't fully grasp that they have they have people of color in their family that they care and love about, but they don't fully grasp what they're going through. And I find people in my own family posting stuff like they post more about the looting, or they'll post like Martin Luther King didn't loot, or they'll post like a white guy got killed by a black guy, but nobody's protesting that. And sometimes you just want to shake them and just say, "Why?" It's like you're. It's almost like when they do stuff like that, it's almost like they're not justifying what's going on, but it's almost like I can't explain it. I just want to shake them because I'm like, do you realize what you're doing? How you sound? It's almost like you're saying, yeah, it's you're taking the attention off of what is really going on, is what it is. You're almost acting like looting ain't gonna do nothing, and these people are animals and they're out of control and they're wild, and we just got to get away from them. I saw a video of J.R. Smith, and I'm so glad that somebody caught it on video and J.R. got to speak out, because somebody in L.A. Went up to J.R. Smith's car and broke his window. J.R. chased this kid down, or man down, and beat the shit out of him, and it was a white guy. A white guy busted out J.R. Smith's window, but here's the thing. By the time people got their cameras out and their phones out to film it, the narrative could have been just J.R. Smith beats the shit out of a white guy. Because that's all you saw. What you didn't see was the backstory. J.R. Smith, his car parked on the side of the road in a residential neighborhood, not bothering anybody, sees somebody break his window for no reason. So he chased the guy out and beat his ass. And God bless J.R. Smith, because he didn't back down from it at all. Before the video got released, he made a statement going, yep, somebody broke my window out. They broke the wrong one. And I chased this guy down and I beat his ass. I mean, God bless J.R. Smith. I was so glad he came out and spoke about it. And I know it sounds bad, but it's like when my wife or daughter, when they hear of somebody committing a crime, I hear them say a lot, please don't be black. Please don't. I hope this person isn't black. And I find myself saying that too, a lot. But in this case, I was so glad that, I know it sounds odd, but I was so glad the guy was white that broke out J.R. Smith's window. Because I was like, see, it's not just black people looting, rioting, and vandalizing things. So I was so glad it was a white guy that did it. I know that some people may be like, that sounds weird coming from a white guy, but I was so glad. Because it wasn't just J.R. Smith beating up some random white dude. It wasn't a black guy vandalizing cars. It was a white guy. This is what I also learned. Don't fuck with J.R. Smith. That's one of the guys, even when he was in the NBA, you don't want to mess with him at all. But I was supposed to have on Desi Banks this week. He was supposed to be my guest, but I felt like this wasn't the week to just have a comic on, or anybody, any actor or actress just acting like this stuff isn't going on in the country. So it was interesting. So we're going to have Desi on next week or the week after. But even Desi caught some heat. I mean, he made a post on Twitter where he showed Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. at a march, and it said something like, "This is a protest," and underneath it had some people in Target like ransacking it, and he said, "This is a riot." So I got what Desi's goal was with the post, but he caught so much backlash from it because people was like, somebody educate this dude. And people, here's the problem. Instead of people just trying to educate Desi, because he's a young guy, people just start attacking him. And I was like, look, we all know there was no malicious intent behind that tweet. we all know what he was trying to say. It's just he's young, picked the wrong picture, and he didn't understand the full narrative of what he said. And so even he caught some heat by just posting something. So I just felt like it's odd to have just a comedian on this week to act like nothing's going on in the country. So every other Saturday since this pandemic lockdown's been going on and I haven't been working, me and my wife, we drive out to Napa where my manager lives. And we take a drive out there and, you know, every other Saturday just have lunch, sit outside, talk about the state of the world. And it's interesting because, you know, my wife's from Oakland, grew up in the Acorn, if you know what Oakland is, grew up on, I could, like 98th and MacArthur, one other part of Oakland. And then my manager, everybody knows my wife's black, but my manager, and I'm not being distracted here, I'm just looking at my phone because I want to get this correct. Now, my manager's a white lady, also from the Bay Area. She lived in Haight-Ashbury until she was 8, and then she moved to Lafayette. And then she ended up going to college at UCLA. But she's been in the entertainment industry for years. She's repped numerous of the Wayans brothers, numerous black celebrities. So even my manager is a white woman and who's been around black people a majority of her professional career. And then my wife being a black woman, both grew up in about the same age, same area, but completely different experiences. But they both grew up in the Bay, where if you grew up in the Bay, you're going to come in contact with every different culture, every different religion. So you're not as sheltered as like someone in the Midwest that never leaves the Midwest. But so we go to Napa. This is Saturday, and I'm sitting there, and I'm at one point, it's almost like I felt like, man, half the country is in chaos, and I'm literally having the calmest breakfast I've ever had in my life. Like, we're sitting in Napa, got these beautiful vineyards everywhere. There's like literally a dog barking in the front yard at cars. People wave at you when you drive by. And we're having like turkey bacon, gluten-free pancakes. It's everything you would think in Napa, fresh berries, things like that. And I found myself looking at my wife and my manager having a conversation about politics, state of the country, just everything we've been going through. George Floyd, they're agreeing on some things, they're disagreeing on some things, but they're having a civil conversation about it. So I'm sitting there, and this is the thing about comedians. We observe a lot. And so I'm like, for me to be quiet for like 20 minutes straight is a feat in itself. But I found myself just listening to those two talking about everything. And I'm always under the whole, I should never be the smartest guy in the room. Especially when it comes to politics and like things going on in the country right now. I'm very much like, I just try to observe and make comments where I can, thought out comments and not rush to judgment or rush to react or rush to post stuff. So I'm sitting here watching these two women that grew up in the same part of the country, completely different experiences, completely different upbringings. I'm talking about economically and everything else when they were growing up. And I asked them to hold their conversation. I said, hey, can you two like stop talking politics, stop talking about George Floyd and everything? I said, because I really want you to have this same discussion on my podcast. I want to be able to video it, and I want to see people's reaction, because I think it's important. Because on one hand, you got my manager, a white lady, who is aware of white privilege, she's very aware of she's very lucky to be where she's living at, to have the life that she has, and no fault of her own. She's done nothing wrong, but she even asked me, she goes, do I ever struggle or feel like I have white guilt? And I had to think, and I was like, I don't think so. But, because I've never, I grew up in a trailer park, never had money growing up. I've worked for everything I've had to build the life I've had as a comedian. And the thing about me is I've always felt like I looked at the world a little different than most people, because the people that disappointed me the most growing up was white males. I had no problems with black dudes. I had a lot of black friends growing up. Every black male adult that I came in contact with growing up was just cool. But the white men in my life in my adolescent years were the ones that completely disappointed me and abused me. So my perspective is a little different than most. So I was like, I don't know. I never really felt like I had white guilt, so to speak. I've been very aware of being a white guy and what comes with it, the advantages you have. And I'm not talking about in the workforce. I'm just talking about getting pulled over. I've never been afraid if a cop pulled me over. I've never thought, oh my God, I'm going to die. The only encounter I ever had with a police officer where I was like, whoa, what just happened? I was in St. Louis, and I dropped a buddy of mine off at his house. And he was a black guy, lived in a black neighborhood, lower income black neighborhood. And I had to rent a car. And I drove by his house, and he forgot to tell me we drove by his house. So basically, I had to circle around. So I drove by his house once. We missed it. I said, damn, Terrence, missed the house? And then we drove back by his house again. So then he said, just pull around back. There was an alley. He's like, I'll just get out, and I'll just go in through the back, through his backyard. I said, all right. So what I didn't know was cops were staking out the neighborhood. So here I come, and I'm probably like a Chevy Malibu rent-a-car. And this is, I'm guessing this is 18 years ago. So I drove by Terrence's house once. We missed it. I drove back again. Now we're circling behind the house to drop him off. So to the cops, it looks like I'm probably casing the house. So I drop Terrence off. Terrence gets out the car, goes into his backyard, and I'm talking 5 seconds after he walked into his house, I got lit up. There was a cop car came one way, in front of me, behind me, and through the side. I don't know where the side alley was, but a cop came coming down. So now I got 3 cars lighting me up with the lights on and the sirens, everything. Woo, right? Cop gets on his loudspeaker. Put your hands on the steering wheel. So I got my hands on the steering wheel. Then he's like, take my hands out the window. Then I got my hands out the window, right? Turn the car off. So I pull one hand in, I turn the car off, and then I take the keys out. I drop the keys on the side, right? Then he tells me step out of the car. I step out of the car. I walk backwards to the trunk of the car. I put my hands on the trunk. They never put me in handcuffs. I'm sure they wasn't expecting a white guy to get out of the car, for one, or once they saw my hands. So now my hands are on the trunk of the car. They asked permission to search the car. I said, yeah, go ahead and search the car. Sorry about this. Damn it. This is when you should have your phone off when you do your podcast, because the people are coming in and it's dinging. So I apologize for that. So now I got my hands on the trunk of the car. And there's white cops and black cops both there. The white cop could have been one of the biggest dicks I've ever come in contact with. So they asked to search my car. I said, yeah, go ahead and search the car. So now the white cops asked me, are we going to find anything in your car? And I said, no. And now I'm starting to freak out a little bit, because I'm like, oh shit, this is a rent-a-car, and I never opened the trunk yet. And I'm thinking, did something happen? Was this a car they staked out? Or what if your brain starts playing tricks on you. So literally I went, just like this, I went, and the cop goes, what's so funny? Like, now he's this close to my face. What's so funny? And I literally just went, you never think it's gonna happen? I was just like, you never think it's going to happen to you. And he goes, yeah, well, we'll see. What did he say? Well, we'll see if you're still laughing once we search the car. So I'm like, what? Now I'm in my brain going, why is this guy just being a dick? Like, I've complied. I've done nothing wrong. And then they search my car. They don't find anything. Now they tell me to back up. Keep in mind, I still have not been put in handcuffs. They open the trunk of the car. Absolutely nothing's in the trunk. Then they shut it. I'm clear, right? The black cop was searching the car. The white cop was on me, right? So then instead of saying sorry, instead of saying why I got pulled over, or, you know, hey, man, this is drug activity, or we've been staking this out, or your car looked like a car, literally the cop just goes, all right, you can go, right? And now I'm like, what just happened? Now I'm like confused. And so now the comedian kicks in. So now I'm like, I'm trying to make a joke. So I look at the cop, the same cop's being a dick, and I said, hey, man, I had White Castle, man. Now it's cold, right? So now I'm trying to make a joke like, damn, man, you made my White Castle cold. The cop goes, you shouldn't be eating that shit anyways. Just gets in his car and go, why was he a dick the whole time? But at the same time, I never felt like my life was in danger. At any point, even when I got lit up from every angle, even when I got spoken to through the loudspeaker of the cop car, you know, put your hands out, get out of the car, I never felt like I was in danger at all. And that could be, I don't know, that's clearly because I'm white. Maybe that's the white privilege in me that kicked in. But it was an interesting question my manager asked me, do I ever have white guilt? So with that, when I heard my manager and my wife talking, I was like, this would be really good on tape. And I think it would be helpful. And I don't think we've seen a conversation like this, and we should have more of it, where you got two women, one black, one white, both want the same thing in life. They both just want to be happy. They want to be healthy, and they want everyone to be treated equal. But on one hand, you got my manager asking my wife, what can I do? What should I do? What is proper? I don't want to offend anybody. Because I see this on social media a lot too. I see somebody saying something like, this is a human problem. We as humans got to do better. And people just get attacked. Like, this is a black problem. We don't need your help. Or people in the same comment section, people will be like, you know, we don't need your help. And then be like, this doesn't concern you. I'm like, dude, this concerns everybody. You know, and I think in my lifetime, I've never seen protests with so many different types of people protesting, marching together. I saw the police officer in Flint, Michigan, the sheriff, where he took off his helmet, he put down his billy club, and he was just like, yo, we here, man. He told everyone that was there for the protest, he goes, we love you guys. We love this city. He goes, I told my police officers, what do you want from us? What do you need? We got to get through this together. And then the whole crowd started chanting, walk with us. Saying, you know, walk with us, walk with us. And the sheriff started walking with him. He started marching with them. He said, you know, I want to turn this into a parade, not a protest. And he started marching with people. And I've seen this in other cities too, where the police officers are taking a knee, or they're actually, there was I don't know if it's the sheriff or someone police officer in Houston marching with the protesters, because there's a huge difference between a protest and a riot and looters, and I think sometimes we lump them all together. I even made an insensitive text where the small town where we live in, there was supposed to be a protest, and I texted to a couple of friends of mine. I said, why would you protest in our small town? I said, you should go to San Jose or Oakland and protest. And I, not knowing, one of the guys that I was texting, it was like 10 of us on this group text. He's a firefighter in Oakland, so he'd seen all the chaos. So he sent me a text on our own and just said, just basically explained to me like that text didn't come off right. And I talked to him and I said, no, I didn't mean rioting and looting. I meant protesting. I said, you'll get more eyes and more course of action protesting in a bigger city like Oakland or San Jose, as opposed to the smaller town that we lived in. So, but, this is what I want to do on this podcast. I want to step away and not talk, just completely get off screen, off the mic. And I want my manager, who agreed, and my wife to come on, and I want them to have a one-on-one discussion about what they can do or answer questions. Just have an open discussion. I don't want to be in the middle of it. I don't want to do my 2 cents, because I really want to have an honest, open discussion between two women, one white, one black, grew up in the same area, had completely different life experiences, but want the same thing out of life, but don't know how to go about it, so to speak. Like, what does my wife want from white people? What does my manager, what can she do to help black people in the future? So I think this is a timely conversation. Kenya! So I don't talk to my wife that way. I want to make sure she got on camera. So are you ready? You ready to talk to Lisa? Yeah. Okay, one thing, this is the difference between my wife and me. She's about to come on. She's got notes. She's got talking points. She doesn't want to forget anything. On the other hand, I just kind of wing it. That's why originally I wanted to call my podcast Fuck It. Because half the time I don't know where I'm going with these conversations. She's not like me. So I'm going to bring her in. Listen, I'm stepping out. I will see you guys next week. But my wife's going to close the show. My wife's going to introduce my manager. But I think it's important to have a discussion like this between two women. And I think it's going to help. Because I keep hearing people going, what can I do? What should I do? And I'm the same way. I don't have the answer. But I do think this conversation these two women are about to have can help some people, white and black, just to see you don't have to agree on everything, but you can still have a productive discussion and something productive can come out of it. So I'm going to bring my wife in.
Hi, guys. Gary has, believe it or not, trusted me with this podcast, okay? And this is it's been a crazy few days. And Lisa, Gary's manager, is a white woman. And I agreed to do this with her because I know that she is smart. She is in tune with not all of black culture, but she is empathetic to the plight of black people, especially where we are now. And her heart is in the right place. So it's not a lot of fluff and bullshit with her. So I agreed to do this. And I think you guys, she's real smart. So I think you'll come away, especially if you're white, you'll come away with some pretty good insight, because I get a lot of my white friends saying, well, what do you want us to do? You know what I mean? And honestly, at first, I had some thoughts. But Lisa, from a white woman, can give her point of view also. So with that, I'm going to introduce to you a good friend of ours, another protector of Gary. Anybody that watches out for Gary is good with me. Lisa Strode. Hi, Lisa.
That was so sweet. That was awesome. Thank you so much. I just really followed up with the whitest statement. That's awesome, Kenya. Thank you.
No, I really meant it, and I don't know if it came off crazy, but you are definitely someone I trust. You are very smart. You have always been willing to use your white privilege to help, and I appreciate it. My family appreciates it. So with that, I hate that we're here talking about this after 5 days. That we're still talking about this. And I just want to make sure that I don't know what Gary told, I'm not quite sure how Gary prefaced this conversation, but it is stemming from the murder of George Floyd. When this started, when this first happened, with the video, I could not believe the arrest did not happen swiftly to all of them. All 4 of them. I can't believe as of now that 3 of them are still at home chilling, watching TV, having breakfast, walking to the refrigerator. I do believe that had the arrest, all 4 of them, had they been arrested swiftly, I'm not quite sure we would be here in this position. And if my thought is seriously, what the hell's going on with these other 3? Why haven't they been arrested? And if we're not ready to talk to you, Black people, I say give all information to Governor Cuomo, who can explain everything. So if there's a reason that Minneapolis is aware of that we're not arresting the additional 3 police officers that had a knee on George Floyd, give the shit to Andrew Cuomo, who can explain it to us, because he is the master of explanation. So that's how we got here. But even before George Floyd, I know Black people are frustrated. We're tired of the systematic racism. We feel unheard. We feel undervalued. We feel like we've been offered a lot of false promises and bullshit, just to tell you the truth. And I think we're over it. It's done. We're over it. So something is going to change. And so anyways, that I hope gives a little bit of a background of why this conversation is taking place and how it has really evolved from why they haven't been arrested to how our friends of other races and just our friends that care about us, how they can help us. So, Lisa.
Yeah.
What were you? Yeah, go ahead.
So, what's really interesting to me about this conversation is, for me, how it started was when Gary called me and said how he wanted to be a part of the solution. Mm-hmm. And he had an idea of what he wanted. And I said, okay, well, let me tell you how that lands for me as a privileged white person. And we started talking through, and I said, because I had posted a comment on Gary's, on a post Gary had put out mm-hmm. previously, and I had gotten attacked for it, and I didn't say it right. And I was like, wow, this is really volatile, because my heart is in the right place, and I'm saying this is a human issue. This is not just an issue for Black people. This is injustice. This is racism. This is intolerable. Mm-hmm. And there was a woman that I saw a post today of a white woman whose husband had been on the force, and I think she had said it in such a way that it resonated with me, which she said, this is not an issue for the Black people alone. And I'm paraphrasing, but what I took away, mm-hmm. this is not an issue for the Black people to solve. This is not a thing for white people to come along and help. We are the institution, right? The white institution needs to purify itself. It needs to have a no tolerance policy. And you and I had talked about, because up until that point of hearing that, I was thinking, what does Black America want me to do? Right? And I have my own ideas of how we mm-hmm. address this, but when you have a situation that is as volatile as this, and where we're coming from such different realities, mm-hmm. It is not for me to presume how to help. right? I do want to know what is being asked of me and how I can be supportive. But I also think, as this woman was saying in such a powerful way, it's not for me to support the Black community as much as it is for me and all of us to personally refuse to accept this as a part of our reality. And I thought about the Me Too movement, and I only say this in principle, in understanding principles of social change. I don't say this to compare what's going on with what happened. But I thought about how my industry and then other industries kicked out with the error on the side of, if you're accused, you're out, right? They didn't wait for harassment suits to be finalized before people got fired and refused to do business with, right? Gal Gadot said she was not going to do another Wonder Woman if Brett Ratner was a producer. Like, that's just one example. But there was situation after situation of agents fired, lawyers fired, executives fired, shows canceled. There was no cost too great to get rid of perpetrators. And they did it at the accusation. They didn't do it at the final. And a lot of people argued about that. But what I heard today that resonated so much for me was no tolerance. Absolutely no tolerance. And it's on us. It's on every one of us. But it's on the people in power to fix it. It's not. Right.
I agree with that. It's not
for the minority, right?
But let me ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me ask you this. Just because it rolled off your tongue, and I don't really hear a lot of people acknowledge that they have white privilege. But it was a few minutes ago when you was talking. But you acknowledged, it just rolled off your tongue, that you do have white privilege. Why do you think white people don't want to say that they have white privilege? Because I don't necessarily think because you have white privilege makes you racist. Okay, right. I don't believe that at all. But why do you think they don't want to admit that they do have white privilege?
Because I think it's really simple. It's almost like we as humans avoid being characterized in a bad way. I actually came to recognize, so when I worked with the Wayanses, they called me the white lady. And they would laugh at my assumptions that of how the world should work and how I should get respect and how people should do what I said they should do because it was my position to tell them what to do. You have this assumption that the world is here to cater to you. And you fight and argue for it. And so I think I came to my sense of being the white lady and what that meant because it came from somebody who fundamentally loved me, who I had a great relationship with, who could help me see my blind spots without making me, without it being a character defect. It was a worldview that is only natural for me to develop based on, right? Like we all talk about childhood trauma and how we develop a worldview of who we are and how we interact with the world based on our upbringing. So I have childhood trauma that affects me in one way, but I also have privilege, right? I would say that I'm like an affluent feral, right? Like I was, and that means basically that I have this affluence. And I also think that, I grew up in the Haight-Ashbury, and when I moved from the city to the suburbs, I was discriminated against because I was a city kid. They told me things like, "Oh, we don't. You might be able to do that in the city, but that's not what we do here." So I kind of have a perspective of saying like, okay, so what's my bubble? What's my worldview? And believing that is not the same thing as an overdeveloped sense of entitlement.
I think that that privilege can really be used to help some of these causes.
For sure.
For instance, I mean, whether it's financial, whether it's your platform, whether it's your relationships that you have to help us get into a room for a meeting. I think you can use it at the ballot box. And when I say you, I just mean you in general.
What I represent.
Yes. I'm sorry, I'm so distracted because Kennedy is off trying to say something. What is it, Dawn?
What are you trying to say, Kennedy?
There is a privilege with being the majority in this country, and with being the majority, if you speak up, everyone's going to hear you. If you take our side and stand up for what's right, people are going to hear you. And that, in history, that's how change has happened. From the Civil War to segregation to everything, every single really big human rights turning point in this country, it's because it was backed by the white majority.
Okay, so I agree with that.
That's using your privilege for good.
Yes.
On the right side, because Black people have been standing up for ourselves since the birth of the nation, since we came here in 1619. And, you know, it wasn't big changes for us in getting our rights, in terms of getting our rights and stuff, until the majority started using their privilege to speak up for us,
right,
advocate for us, stand with us.
And the majority of those were white women.
And you know what else I want to add? It got to the point where the white majority decided it was intolerable. And I think that there are these breaking points. And I think that when we look at the slave trade in England, Kenya, you and I were talking about this. I was amazed when I heard and learned that it was the householders, the women, who started the boycott of sugar when they discovered that it was as a result of slavery, right? And exactly what Kennedy was saying about, like, that outrage. I mean, we were talking, Gary was talking about the post of Martin Luther King that said, you know, this is a protest and this is a riot, and how that was Bloody Sunday. And the idea that, and I heard them talking about this on CNN this morning, and I really bristled at the word, but what they said about Martin Luther King and his march was that on CNN, they said that they had to bait the police. They weren't baiting anybody. They were exposing the brutality. And that was intolerable to the white majority, right? And I think that is, Kenya, something that you had said that is so important is it's about the organization. Who's organizing this change?
So wait, I do want to talk about that, because that is my biggest frustration right now. But before I get to the frustration of the lack of organization and Black leadership, just because we were talking about Bloody Sunday, I want to talk about protesting modern day. So the protesting now, my frustrations with the protesting now is by day 3, nobody was talking about George Floyd. Everybody was talking about the looting. And my problem with it is by day 3, our peaceful protest, and when I say our, I don't just mean Black people. If you were white or Hispanic or whatever standing next to us to protest, you are our, okay? You are who I'm talking about. When it was infiltrated and hijacked by people who didn't give a shit about the cause, didn't give a shit about us, who came only to cause more havoc in an already chaos situation, because we didn't have a leader. So when we're marching, we just marching. We don't know who we following. You know, if one goes left and the other goes right, where are you supposed to go? How are we supposed to march and to protest? What is our end goal? What are we saying? We just needed more more organization. And I think because we lacked the organization, it allowed the Boogaloo boy, white supremacist, it allowed very far left to come in with their own agenda. And this is what I said on social media. You better know who's standing next to you. Because if the person standing next to you during one of these peaceful protests has on some steel-toed boots, AR-15, a sledgehammer, stuff looks like they packed up to get, like, if they got anything more than a stick or a rock they found, their agenda is probably not our agenda. And with that, and they can do it. You know what I mean? When you see some of these, so they breaking shit, looting shit, and then they egging us on to come in and get it. You got people spray painting on the wall, like F the police. They gonna spray paint the F, and then they looking at you to give you the spray can to finish it up. Egging you on, like, come on. And, I saw some people saying, no, I'm good. I don't want the spray can. But to see all these white people, and mostly were white, whether they were super leftists or white supremacists, they took advantage of the situation. 100%. Why? Because there was no organization. It was chaotic. And we so pissed about what has happened, we are not focused on what is happening. So what started off as our shit became their shit. And for the last couple of days, I've only heard his name today. I've only heard his name 3 times. I heard all about looting. I've heard enough about all this other stuff. It is being lost in transition it's just being lost, not even in transition. It is being hijacked.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, please. Oh,
because
yes. I will rant every now and then, Lisa.
Oh, me too, by the way. Me too. That's what we do. We're good together. But here's the thing that I think is not lost. The rage. The rage and the urgency. And, I think also for a whole lot of people that didn't know, a lot of my people who did not know what was really going on in the Black experience, they're seeing on the television the instigators. They're seeing the white supremacists. They're hearing about, like, all the things that I have been saying, like the level of hate. So when I'm going to digress for a quick second. When Trump got elected, I was shocked. I was shocked because I didn't know my country. I knew there was some of that, sort of traumatized, petulant, entitled, predominantly white male, right? I knew some of that. And frankly, I saw some of that when I was in politics as a political consultant, when Pete Wilson and Kathleen Brown were going for the gubernatorial seat. Wilson was the incumbent, and there were 6.6 million unemployed white men in California at that time that came out to vote for a proposition that was anti-immigrant. And I started to learn a little bit historically about what happens when you have white unemployed men. It's very similar to what happened in Germany, actually. The number of white unemployed Germans was very similar to what was going on in California in 94. So it struck me. So when Trump got elected, because of this population that I was unfamiliar with, to be honest, I thought it was a smaller population. I was like, the problem isn't just Trump, the fact that he's the leader. The problem is that we have this population that believes that this is acceptable behavior, and that the things that Trump is saying, forget policies, don't even talk about policies. The way he's talking and the behavior is unacceptable. And so I think about the fact that we see all of these people now that are instigating the violence that you're talking about, not the Black people who are protesting, not the white people who are protesting. We have instigators that are crossing state lines. We were going to protest here in Napa today, and it was canceled. It was put together in conjunction with the police by the Women's March organization, and it was, Black Lives Matter March. And it got canceled because they got wind of instigators who were going to come in and create violence in Napa. So if all of a sudden, all of those women who are on that chain are aware of the fact that there are conspirators trying to disrupt and create mayhem around racial justice.
Well, first of all, okay, so I am not.
I just said a whole lot. I'm so sorry. That was more than one
You
single
said
subject.
no. I was trying not to. Trump needs to shut the fuck up. So anybody around him or follows him that thinks he is, the God they've been waiting for, they need to text him and tell him to shut the fuck up, because nothing he is saying is being helpful. So just watch it play out from the White House windows. You're excited that the dogs are ready. You're excited that
if they start looting, we start shooting.
Right. I can't even believe that.
It's just not helpful.
It's just not helpful. It's inexcusable. That's the thing. It's more than not helpful. It's inexcusable. And we as a people have to say, this is inexcusable. We cannot tolerate it. We cannot.
Right.
And I think you and I were talking about what that looks like. It's not and God bless the music industry, Atlantic Records is going to shut down business for a day, or it's not that. It's a boycott. It's absolutely refusing to give our support, our money. It's the only way that it affects change is if it affects the economy. Because that's why the sugar boycott worked.
And a lot can change in 6 months. Do you know what I mean? From now into the election.
Yeah, but it's also not just about the election. It's about
Lisa, don't you say that.
I'm not saying it's not that's not vital, but the corporations are actually funding our elections. So, here's where my liberal, perspective comes in. We have to acknowledge that the biggest corporations in America have influence. They have the greatest influence, and they are fed by us. They can't live without us.
Right.
So why are we supporting them? Why are we giving them why are we allowing them to exploit us through consumerism to prop up their political agenda, which is an economic agenda, and they don't care about racial justice? Because
let me tell you why. We Black people, we don't have any real leaders right now. We really don't. You may get, I'm a big believer in you must vote. And whenever you don't feel like voting, you better remember your ancestors that lost their lives trying to get to the polls. And what I can say about voting, this is my thing. I even hear Black people going back and forth about Biden this, Biden that. Let me tell you something about white people. White people didn't think, I would say this. A lot of white people in the Senate did not think Trump would be a good president, but they didn't give a shit because what they had their eyes on a prize, which were the judgeships in the Supreme Courts. They had their eyes on the prize that when we send him a bill, he is going to sign. So we don't give a shit really about Trump. We just need the figurehead of a Republican president. So when people are talking about what the Black vote is going to cost, nobody ain't sent me no survey about what's important to me, what's on my agenda. So for a few talking heads that are out there, we need a committee. Okay, and I'm gonna submit a list of some people I think are appropriate for the committee. But we as Black people need some real leadership, and I just don't know. I know some Black people that I trust, but real leadership, we don't have it. So in terms of, you may get some people saying, okay, in July, on the 7th, I think is the date right now, we're not going to shop. That's not long enough. That's not long enough, first of all. And everybody may not follow that one person. So we need to be clear. Black people, from the 7th to the 14th, we are not going to patronize this person or this store, this corporation. We need to know it as a group. But just because you told the city of Atlanta, and then one day California or San Francisco doing something, we need something more comprehensive and widespread, so they can really feel it. That's all I'm saying.
Well,
that they can really, really feel it.
To that, I think I was thinking about the March on Selma, and I'm embarrassed to say that while I learned a lot in my education, I learned about the March on Selma because I read a script about it, and I actually read the script like the day before I got called into jury duty. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was that, just as you're saying, there was an agenda. The reason they were marching on Selma was because Black people couldn't be on juries. It wasn't a jury of your peers. Right. There was a specific agenda that they were marching for. And I got to say, again, the one thing that I heard today that made the most sense to me was having a zero tolerance policy for any kind of inappropriate behavior or comment. And by the way, the Me Too organization didn't sit there and say, oh, we're only concerned about this or that or the other thing. It was widespread. It was culture, right? This isn't just about the police, although it's acutely about the police because of the violence.
And police accountability.
That's right.
You're right.
That's right. But it's about every other part of it too.
Right.
There should be a fallout the same way. People should be fired and lose their businesses. And I don't mean their businesses they need to lose their livelihood. They need to recognize that this is not who we as a country are. This is not, and for the last how many years since Trump has been here, I'll take full responsibility. I've checked out. I've said I'm gonna buy locally. I'm gonna buy from people. I'm gonna buy organically. I'm gonna buy from organizations that support my mission. I have integrity in how I spend my dollars. But other than that, I've opted out because I'm like this. I don't know what to do with this mass of America.
Well,
but I think we all need to step up a bit. I think we need to get that organization.
And be willing to be uncomfortable. So
that's right.
If we're going to decide that, hey, we're not going to we're not shopping at these businesses, we got to be able to stick to that. So we may be at, Billy Boy's local market on the corner, but, it's convenient to run into. I know Walmart is a huge supporter of Trump. I'm not sure. I don't want to name a lot of other stores because I don't know where they fall on the scale of what they are supporting or not supporting. But if, the committee is formed and it comes back like, hey, guys, so these are the companies that clearly are not working in the interest of Black people or underprivileged people of color. They don't give a shit about us. Do not shop here. I'm good. I won't do it. I'll figure something else out. But I just want to stress, because I'm a huge vote. You guys have to vote. You have to vote. And I am not saying Biden is the perfect, I'm going to talk about the president right now, is the perfect candidate. But what is important is that our bills are written in the House of Representatives and the Senate. It just is sent to Biden's desk to be signed. So we need a president that is empathetic to the plight of Black people, brown people, the underprivileged. We need a president that is saying, tell me what you want, and I'll try to encourage that when I'm in office. And what I can promise you, though, is when I get it, I'm going to sign it. But he doesn't write any bills. He signs law, okay? So when people get so focused on him, the only thing you need to be focused on is when we get when we finally figure out a way to get it to your desk, you're going to sign. That's the answer we need. And then you cannot take your eyes off of the House, and you can't take your eyes off of the Senate. We need the House and the Senate and judges. Trump has elected or, well, I guess
Appointed.
he wouldn't elect. He has, yes, appointed over 300 judges, okay? Most of them have been deemed not even credible, not, they don't even have enough, they have not passed, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the, they're not qualified. And I'm going to get the name for you guys. But they're not even qualified to be judges. Either they haven't tried a case or they don't even, like they scored so low on their LSAT. I mean, just all kind of crazy stuff. So you need to stay focused. It is so much more than just the president. It is the House, it's the Senate, and the judges, because when they are fighting all of these laws that have been signed, all of these bills that have been signed into law, they're going to fight them in those courts.
That's
so
right.
you need to, we really need to stay focused on that. In terms of protesting, I think you should protest. I think there should be some protest rules. I'm going to just throw out a few. I'm not an organizer and I'm not a leader of Black people, but do it during the day. And if somebody's standing next to you look like they about the bullshit, don't be a part of it. Don't get drugged into it. Because when you're out looting and you're burning stuff down, if you're burning down Black-owned businesses, guess what? Once they're burned down, most of them don't come back. And they're still responsible for the loan that they took out to build the business in your community. And when you're burning down, looting your own community, I saw daycare centers looted, a charter school. Where you taking your kids on Monday? All right? That liquor store, that corner store you used to go to, it ain't there no more. I mean, come on. So if you see people that are not with you, have infiltrated the group, don't let them tear up your city. You need those places. You need to be supportive. Black people have always loved and looked out for other Black people. I don't care. When it really comes down to it, y'all can have some sort of beef, but we have always stood up and watched out for not only other Black people, but for other minorities and white women.
That's right.
And white women. So our expectation is for white people, white women, to do the same. I'm not asking you. If you don't feel comfortable protesting, okay. But if you have money and extra funds and you can donate to some of the groups, some of these reputable groups that you feel comfortable with, if you can use your influence and your power maybe to get us in a room, do that. If you can post something on social media, do that. If when you go to vote, you see somebody like, you know what, I really think he's for equality, for all, do that. Move in that direction. Because never in my life would I would have thought that, of course, when you have kids, you pray that they're happy and they're healthy. The prayer for my boys has changed. It's a whole different kind of prayer. I've always taught them to comply, to comply, to comply. Well, guess what? George Floyd complied also. And he's dead today. So the prayer of a Black mother has changed in this climate, and it's just really sad. I do have a question though. So what do you think? Where do you think white people are with Trump? Do you think they're? And I know. So let me preface this. I know that we still have 6 months. And I know it's going to be probably determined on economy. But when you are out and about talking to, rich, privileged people, other white people, wherever, do you think like they are concerned about okay, we're finally concerned, or do they ignore it? Do they think that we are somehow responsible? Do they realize when they see all this looting and crap on TV, it's really not the Black people. It was some other group. Do you know what I mean? Where are they? And I know we're on lockdown, so you may not be able to answer because you may not have had a lot of, contact with others. But where do you think white people are with Trump?
I think that I can't tell you about the white people that you want to know about, because I come from my family is so entrenched in the Democrat side of things. My husband's family is Republican. And we don't consider Trump a Republican. We consider him an anomaly. Like when we talk about politics, that I don't mind Republicans. I don't consider Trump a Republican.
Is that most white people? Do you think most white people think he really, like when they think of him, they really don't think of him as a Republican?
I don't know because again, I live in Northern California. Right?
Yes.
I live in a community where I live in a bubble of kind-hearted. My community is horrified and traumatized by Trump. Truly. We can't. I mean, my people wanted him impeached. My people, we wanted to do everything. We marched. We don't, we don't know what to do about the fact that he's in office. We're doing everything we can do. We're sending money to, congressional areas where we might be able to unseat a Republican. Like we're looking at this nationally, and how can we? Like when I watched Becoming, the documentary with Michelle Obama, and she was saying the heartbreaking part was that the people didn't come out and vote for the House and the Senate in the way that they needed them to. Like my people are doing everything that we can do to support the government we want. And Trump is not that. So I'm not the person who can tell you about the
I need a white person from the Midwest. I'm going to tell Gary to find me a white person from the Midwest so we can get them answers.
Right?
Answered.
Because here's the other thing that if you think about like the hillbilly elegy, if you think about the people the poor white people, if you think about the middle of the country, I'm upset about the rich white people who supported Trump. That shocked me, right? And there's one down the street, and I've seen 3 signs in Napa, but I don't know those people. I don't talk to those people.
Right.
I can't. I don't think their brains work.
Right.
I just don't think they follow linear thought.
Right.
And Kenya, I want to actually bring something up that we talked about, and which is, the thing about the Republicans versus the Democrats, and I think this is important when it comes to organization, is Democrats believe in the like that if you educate people, they will make a good choice. Republicans believe that if you trigger people, they will make the choice you want them to make. And
Democrats really piss me off because I think that they are way too forgiving, and they need to get much more strategic. I'm gonna just tell you. So they need to take a page out of Mitch McConnell's book. He had a plan and he stuck to it.
That's right.
Period.
The Republicans are much better strategists than the Democrats.
It drives me bananas. It really drives me bananas. Yeah.
Me too.
But, okay, so you can't answer this because you're not the right kind of white person I need. But I'm going to just put it out there. And then maybe the right kind of white person I need will, respond on his podcast or something. This is real. I want to know, for a white person, at what age does a black boy become intimidating? Like, when do they start to become afraid or weary, if they don't like the word afraid? Like, I'm really interested, at what point does that happen? At what age is that? And I want to know also at what, how do I say this? At what point do they start to tell their kids to kind of maybe be aware of black kids, to stay away from black? Like, what age is that? Is it 3rd grade? Is it 8th grade? Is it high school? When do they write? When do they write them off? Do you know?
Well, I'll tell you. My sister was beat up by black kids in the city, and my grandfather. Oh, said,
your sister was beat up?
Yeah, we moved out of San Francisco, and my mom. We moved out of San Francisco and moved to the suburbs so we could have the privileged life, right?
Yes.
We could have a swimming pool. And,
yes.
And actually the education in Lafayette was the best of the state. So we moved for education and to be in the country. My grandfather, when I was a grown-up and working with, all of my clients were African American, and my grandfather said, "Oh, well, your parents moved out of San Francisco because the black kids were beating up your sister." And I said, I checked my
Was
grandpa.
your sister a bitch? Was she a bitch?
Right,
Was your sister
exactly.
a bitch?
No.
I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
No,
I couldn't help
but by
it.
the way, we, I think what I think is interesting is that my grandfather said that they were black. And, right?
In the,
yes. By the way, when I was in the city, my best friend was black, and I told my mother I wanted to have black hair, which you will maybe laugh at. My sister and I didn't experience any racial, my sister never came away with that, being afraid of black kids or black people. I didn't come away with that. And it was interesting, generationally, and I don't, I don't know. I never felt threatened by a black boy or a black man any more than I felt threatened by a white boy or a white man.
You know what? That's interesting because I grew up poor, like from the Acorn. Then I went to 26th Street in West Oakland. Then I went to Mountain Boulevard, but I ended up at 98th and MacArthur living. And I knew we were like poor, I guess. But I never, ever remember being intimidated or afraid of white people. We traveled a lot. I moved to Santa Barbara. It was all white people. I mean, I never had a problem with being afraid of white people. And sometimes I think the generation before, the generation under me, the black boys, I just think they don't realize, when I see them with saggy pants, I can't stand it. I think that they don't realize how intimidating they are just being. They don't have to sag their pants. Just being who they are is so intimidating to a lot of white people, which is why I think that they are they are so picked on. They don't want them to succeed, that they constantly beat them down emotionally or whatever. As you see, we got the shit show going, got the dog barking, the headphones are all over. It's just real crazy. I'm real crazy.
It's really interesting to think about. I am intimidated by people. I'm intimidated by and here's a really interesting thing.
I shouldn't use the word
about.
Intimidated. I just think black. I shouldn't use that because I'm sure I'm going to get so much back. What I'm saying is black men are so fucking cool just being, just being in a room. They don't have to, the gold chains are unnecessary. The saggy pants are unnecessary. The fly cars are unnecessary because they so fly. And if they could ever get to a point when they wake up feeling I'm so fucking fly that I don't need all the extra, I think the decisions would be made.
Don't you think that when somebody comes towards you, right? And they are putting off machismo or bravado, male, whether it's redneck, whether it's Latino, whether it's black, if they're coming at you with this, energy.
What is that, Lisa? I'm supposed to be here. This is my room. I own the room.
I don't know what it is, but I feel it.
I get it. Yes.
Right? It doesn't matter what culture you're from.
Right.
If you are coming at me with that energy, I don't. Right. I had a guy. I think I told you this. Late night, driving home from Hollywood after shooting a show. It was 1:00 in the morning. I'm in my car. This guy is across the street, comes towards my door, and I lock my door, and he starts yelling at me that I'm a racist. And I said, I don't give a fuck what color you are. You come to my door at 1:00 in the morning. That's threatening, right?
Right.
So I think we could, you and I, and civil, kind, good people can talk about behavior that is threatening. I'll tell you, when I walk through an airport, maybe it's because of the years of working with the people that I work with, I make eye contact with Black people and give them a,
I see you.
Yeah, I see you. They see me. Like, that's what I mean, and I know I've co-opted that from being with the guys that I was with. But I see them and I have an affinity towards them, and I find I have warmness for them. And by the way, they give it back to me.
I was going to say, I think Black people are the warmest people ever. They will allow you to come over to the parties, to the this. You come to the door, they don't know who you are, but they just say welcome. Or, they just really do embrace you, even if you don't know who or what they are. Yes. Kennedy wants to say something.
I also say that at least with my generation.
Speak up, please.
Okay, I also say, like, at least with my generation, like the younger generation, it's like Black culture is the culture for, like, everybody.
Right, I agree.
It is the standard. It is what everyone wants to be.
Right. And they want our culture, but they don't want us.
Wasn't it, Kenya? I mean, I think it was true for us growing up as well. Black culture has always been, I don't know if it's always, but, like, you hear about how Elvis Presley was influenced by blues and Black music, and how, like, and while we were kids, right? Magic Johnson. Sorry, that's a whole nother thing. But, like, Michael Jackson crossed over, right? There was a crossover to mainstream, right? But it's always been, and by the way, urban culture. Right. Urban culture is where the creativity is coming from, and I guess there's probably something in country music that I'm not aware of, but I do agree that there is. We could have a cultural conversation that would be different. I like honest conversation. I like showing who you are.
Well, you can handle honest conversation. Some people can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Honestly, some people can't, when you were talking about eye contact, like, I am great at eye contact, except sometimes with homeless people, because I feel such guilt. I'll give my food. I usually will give food over money, but I have to make a conscious effort to have that sort of eye contact, just because I think I feel such guilt, like I should be doing more, or I want to know the story, but I do want to let them know that they are seen, but I have to, like, you better look at them. You know what I mean? I have to tell myself, you need to look at them, because they're here. So you need to let them know that you do see them. When you talked about eye contact, that is, like, something that I constantly am reminding myself about.
Yeah, so I do think that for me, because I have been, in Black culture the way that I have, that, I've gone to the mega church that is the African American church. Like, I feel very at home in those communities. The more we understand somebody else's reality and somebody else's perspective and somebody else's prejudices and biases, the better we can work with them, and I do think that there should be on all sides.
As we're going to get off here, is there any sort of suggestions that you may have for whites that may want to help, like help the cause, or use their white privilege, or just anything that they can do to feel supported, that can help support us, that can help us feel like we are supported?
I'm going to say this woman's name because I think that every white person should go on Facebook and see this woman. Her name is Melissa McCreary. And I wouldn't normally give her name out, except for that she has gotten 12 million views, I think. No, it's like ridiculous. And 12 million views since this morning, I think. And, the 27th. So this has been a couple of days. Melissa McCreary, McCrery. I don't think anybody can give better guidance than what she said, which is that we all need to demand of our leadership a plan. That we need to demand of our spiritual leaders, of our political leaders, of our community leaders, and I would even add of our commerce leaders. I would say that, we need to come together in the organizations that we are in and in the places that we are in, and we need to demand a plan. We need to demand organization and a plan. That's the way that we go. There's no one answer in terms of what you donate to, right?
Right.
But the one answer that is true at every point of contact, right? The question of what can I do? Well, what's in front of me? What am I paying for? Who am I electing? Who's charged with serving me in my spiritual life, in my political life, and in my economic life? And if I task myself with the accountability, as you said, of being uncomfortable for the sake of change, uncomfortable, I can't tolerate what I saw.
Right.
I can't. I can't have that be on the news. I can't have that be my country and my tax dollars and I can't.
So what about you, Kennedy? Kennedy did not really get on camera, but
she was here.
Sure doing a lot of talking off camera. So, you have any last sort of remarks or thoughts maybe we missed or... Oh, she said yes. I heard that. Okay. So, speak it loud. Speak it proud.
Just about, what's actually going on right now. George Floyd is essentially, in my opinion, a real catalyst to what's going on because there's not a lot of cases filmed, and that gives room for people to make their own narrative, but it's really clear what happened, and it makes, it just kind of validates that police brutality is real. And the march and the conversation needs to keep going after hopefully there is a conviction, after there is charges for everyone involved, all four, the remaining three. And so I just see a lot of people well, they're not even talking about George Floyd. It's now bigger than him. He was what started it, but this happens to a lot more people. It happens a lot of times not filmed. Those people might not ever get justice, so pray that justice is served in this case, but this issue is way bigger, and it's rooted in some deep stuff that needs to be confronted head on. And
Okay. All right. So
I think, and just to add something to that, there was a lawyer that I heard speaking this morning who is a Trump supporter and a former Republican congressman, and he was saying, this is first degree murder. This is not third degree murder, and he was breaking it down. And when I think that we can talk about George Floyd and we should all stay out of any allowing anybody to justify, argue, defend, or explain. When a Republican congressman in support of Trump can admit that this is first-degree murder, we don't have to wait for anything else. This is undeniably, intolerably. There's no argument or conversation to be had. The change needs to happen now, and I agree that this is the tipping point, that the conversation, again, that Jade, don't justify, argue, defend, or explain. We're changing things. We're not going to talk about, all of the details of the case. This is, I don't mean to say we can't talk about the details of the case, but the question is, how do we affect change immediately, the same way that we did in the Me Too discussion, where people were afraid to argue, they were afraid to wait for the verdict of guilty. They said, we're going to be beyond reproach. Nobody in our organization gets to have a hint of sexual assault or harassment. It's unacceptable. And that's what we need to have in our entire society and institution. That let George be the tipping point that changed it all. The same way that, you look at the Rose McGowan, or you look at or Alyssa Milano, you want to talk about who started, or by the way, there were hundreds of people that came before, right? Mm-hmm. And they all came out and they all talked about it. But the point is that we all got to this place where we said, no longer is any of this acceptable.
Right. I totally agree with that. I totally agree. Well, I would like to say that systematic racism is real. And I think people don't want to say it's real, because then it means you got to go back and change all the systems. I also want that you guys have to vote. We all have to vote, not only in the presidential, but on the local levels. You have to vote for candidates that truly have your interest, or the interest of the people, that have the same empathy. You have to get out and vote. You do. I don't care what some of these celebrities are out here saying to you. Get out and vote.
That's right.
And so with that, I hope there was some nugget that no matter what color you were, what gender, I hope there was some nugget of helpfulness, or that you were able to take away from this podcast today. Thank you, Gary, for being generous and turning over the Get Some podcast. Looks like I got some. Thanks, Kennedy, for your input, because you are the culture I was talking about, and just I want to thank. I don't want to come off like I don't understand or love or like white people. I've met some dope white people that have been supportive to this cause, to me, to my family. They have been mentors when I couldn't find a mentor. So I want white people to know we love y'all. We know, not just me, but just black people in general. We know some real dope white people. So we know when we out here fighting and, yelling, if you dope and you've been down with the cause and you've been supportive, we ain't talking about you. Okay? So just remember that. We appreciate you, and we appreciate your support. Lisa, I love you, and I thank you for being willing to come on and, kind of talk about this. Thank you for admitting that you do have white privilege, because that just rolled off your tongue. I appreciate it. Thank you for all you do for Gary. I just appreciate it. I appreciate your time. And once again, thank you, Gary, for letting me and Lisa take over to Get Some podcast.